certain to have some level of a desired result at the end. So on this note, I would like to welcome Mr. Lampe Omoyele. You're welcome to the session, sir.
Thank you, Tope, and thank you, Dayo, and good afternoon to everyone who has joined, and thank you for inviting me. I'll just be sharing a screen to show some slides that I will speak to. Like I said, I'll just be using the slides as a basis for the conversation that we would have, and so some of the things I would say would not necessarily be on the slides. So I'd just like to confirm that everyone can see the slides that I'm showing.
Yes, we can, sir.
Okay, great. Thank you. So as Tope has already indicated, I'll be sharing this afternoon about strengthening your marketing plan and with focus on market segmentation. As most of us would know, the marketing plan cuts across from typically at the center, talking about the marketing mix elements, the 4 Ps, which I will come to. But one of the things that I have found is that a lot of mistakes are made by businesses and brand managers when they think about the marketing mix almost in isolation of the markets that they want to play in. So in this first slide, essentially what I'm going to be reinforcing is that every marketing plan ought to begin with understanding the market segments that the brand or the business wants to play in. So at the heart of every marketing plan should be market segmentation. Even if you already have an idea about the product that you want to sell or market into the business, into the market, you need to have clarity around the segments that you want to serve. So segmentation really is the critical part in building your marketing plan. It is from segmentation that you'll be able to select the appropriate target markets that you want to serve with your product or service. And when you have decided upon the target markets through market understanding, you then get to a point of positioning where you begin to look at what kind of perceptions, what kind of space do you want to occupy in the minds of your target market? What do you want your target market to think about you in terms of your offering? Because it's those perceptions, the positioning you have in the minds of the target market that will determine whether they will buy you or not over and above competition. And after you have gone through the STP process, the segmentation, the targeting, and the positioning process, that you can then develop the marketing mix, which classically is the product, the price, the place, and the promotion, and all the other sub elements that come within this classic 4. So if you have a product, you need to be understanding who is that product for, or who would that product serve. So that's where market segmentation comes to play. You have a product or service. What perceptions do you want to have? Do you want that product or service to have in the minds of your target market? It is from there that you'll be able to develop your pricing strategy. If you don't have clarity around your market segmentation and your target market, you could have a situation where you price wrongly. So very quickly, before I go into the granular details about market segmentation, if you have a product that in your mind you believe is for lower income people, but your pricing strategy doesn't address that and it's too highly priced, then you will not succeed. In the same place, if you have a product that is premium priced and you're not selling it in the appropriate place where those who can afford it can buy it, then the product will fail. In the same vein, if you have a product that is targeted at, say, older people, about 70 and above, and you choose to communicate on Instagram, then you fail because the average 70-year-old is not on Instagram. You'll be better placed in looking at, say, radio and newspaper advertising. So, but you see, you cannot get your elements of the marketing mix correct and in tune to be successful if you don't have your STP right. And it starts from segmentation. And that's why many brands and businesses tend not to succeed. And it doesn't matter whether it's a business to business service, or is it business to consumer? So segmentation is at the heart. And once you get it right, then you're on your way to success. It's not your 100% basis for success, but it is you're on the way to success. So having established that foundation, what is market segmentation? It's essentially having an entire market. So you have a universe of the product or the service that you are thinking of providing to the market. And so you have an entire market. But segmentation entails breaking down that entire market into various segments where you have the potential buyers or the users having similar characteristics. And the operating word here is similar, not necessarily exactly the same. It's about similar. They have similar characteristics. They have similar needs and motivations. And you see, they would require different marketing mixes. As I said earlier on, a 70-year-old will require a different marketing mix from a 24-year-old. Perhaps in terms of the product that you're offering, perhaps in terms of the pricing, in terms of the place of distribution, in terms of the promotion. And when I say promotions, I'm talking about advertising, PR, sales promotions, and the entire gamut under the PR of promotion. And so, because it's difficult to serve an entire market, entire mass market, if you use Nigeria as an example, almost 200 million people, it's difficult for one product to be able to address all the needs and the wants of 200 million people because their characteristics are different. So that's the significance of having segments, building segments of people or businesses with similar characteristics such that you can then begin to build your marketing mix. And the marketing mix is at the center of your marketing plan. So as this diagram shows, you have the entire market, and each of those boxes or circles or different colors represents people or businesses. So I can see there's a yellow rectangle, there's a yellow square, there's a circle red, there's a yellow circle. It represents different people. So segmentation then entails bringing those that have similar characteristics. In this case, similar here, in this example, segment 1 are those that are in squares. And then segment 2 are those that are in circle. So that's one way to do the segmentation in this case. Another way would be putting all those which are yellow in the same quadrants, and those who are in red in the same quadrants. That's what it means about similar. They may not be exactly, but they have certain similar characteristics that you can then begin to look at how you can develop your marketing mix to address. So let's look at a real life example, building on that. So imagine that you're a makeup artist. And I know right now that makeup artists are probably going through a challenge because of the current situation with the COVID-19 pandemic. But let's use this as an example. So you can have an entire market of makeup users. But you can then further break that down to female makeup users and male makeup users. And I'm not saying male makeup users tongue-in-cheek, because we know that there are some males that do makeup, all right? I shall not mention any names. But so that's one way of segmentation. But you can even further break down the segmentation. So even within the female makeup users, you could actually also say you have users that are heavy users, and I'm going to come to that as well. Heavy users, there could be a segmentation that says light users. You can even have segmentation of those that use makeup only when they're going to parties. I mean, I once had a conversation with a group of makeup artists. And one of the things that we found out is that even within a week, the usage of makeup changes, it evolves. Between Monday and Wednesday, usage of makeup artists is not significant because people are going to the office and they're typically doing their makeup themselves. But from Thursday, with wedding engagements, business begins to boom. So you can actually even do segmentation based on that to say, look, those who are using makeup for party going. So there are different ways, and I'll drill down a bit further. So that's really the process of segmentation. So why is segmentation so important for any business? So let me quickly say that first point there says because people are different. 200 million people in Nigeria, 20 odd people in Lagos, different. Even within a household of 5 or 6 people, where you have the father, the mother, you have the children, maybe they are teenagers, maybe they're in 20s, their needs, their wants will differ. So markets consist of various buyers and users, different in various respects. So you can hardly have a scenario where one product or one strategy will fit all. I think, and let me go quickly to the last point here, is that I think a candid recipe for failure is for any business, any brand, any product or service to say, when you ask the question, who's your target market? And you say everybody. I think that's a recipe for failure. You cannot be everything to everybody at the same time. Now, markets are increasingly generic and competitive. So a key way to get competitive, to drive competitive advantage, is to have clarity around the market segments that you are addressing as a business or a brand. And what it helps you to do is focus, and you can target appropriately. Hardly any business has all the money in the world to invest in everyone. Even the big brands such as Apple or Coca-Cola, they have market segments that they prioritize. So you can have a primary target market, you can have a primary target segment, and a secondary and even tertiary, but you must do segmentation, be able to prioritize. It enables you to focus, it enables you to target appropriately. So these are key reasons why market segmentation is so important and critical, and is at the heart of developing your marketing plan and strengthening it. So what are the steps that you can take in market segmentation? One is customer mapping. The beginning point is that you map the customer, either the current customers or the potential customers of your business. And you do this because you want to have a deep understanding of their needs and motivations. And one of the most important questions to ask is the who. And that's where we will spend time in this matrix. So this matrix is one that I've built on from some work done by Philip Kotler, who is a professor of marketing in America. But so there's this framework of 5 W's and 1 H questions that you can ask. But for the purpose of this, the critical one is the who question. Who are you trying to serve with the product that you may already have or you're thinking about? Who? And the who is not only about the user, the who is also about the shopper. Because depending on the product category or the service category, there are times when the person who is using the product really might not have any major play in terms of the decision of taking the product. Maybe it might be the shopper that is more critical. So for example, in diapers category, where brands such as Molfix or Pampers play, the person who is using is the baby. But apart from maybe if the baby is uncomfortable with a particular brand, and maybe because of wetness or rashes, the person that ultimately takes the decision is, in most cases, the mother. There could be other influences in terms of the brand chosen, such as, say, midwives or grandma. But the core here is who is using and who the shopper is. And even if you're a business-to-business proposition, maybe, for example, you are an outsourced consultancy providing services to organizations. That's business to business. You need to understand who and which industries are you seeking to play, where are the opportunities, and then who within those organizations are key influencers and decision makers. That's part of the process of market segmentation. So the who is critical. And there are questions that you can also try and ask and try to understand as you go into the when. So when are they using the product? When are they buying? When are they purchasing? Where are they purchasing for? If it's a consumer good, is it the open market? Is it the supermarket? And there are shifts. And the great thing you must understand with these questions is that the fact that you've answered them a year or 2 ago doesn't mean that they remain valid today. So there are questions you must keep on asking to try and understand the changes in the consumer or the customer. Now, particularly in this era that we're in with the pandemic, when definitely consumer and customer behavior has changed and will change, even when we're out of this season, you need to be close to understand the changes that are happening. The what speaks to what are they buying and what are they not buying. And also there's a great question about why. Why are they doing what they're doing? And why are they not doing what they're doing? And then how as well, how are they buying? Are they buying in bulk, for example? Are they buying every month? Those are the kind of questions you can ask. So these are questions you ask in terms of customer mapping, but the critical one is the who. Who's the user? Who's the shopper? Who are the key influencers? So that's the first step in the process of market segmentation. And then you go on to try and identify the segmentation variables that can be used. And there are different variables. I'm not just to focus on 6, but there could be many other variables that you can use. There's the demographic, which has to do with the population, what age, the gender, what ethnic group, what their marital status. Those are some of the issues around demography. So you could decide that, my segmentation strategy is that I want to address people between age 18 to 25, and that's your focus. But it has its limitation because people aged 18 to 25 don't all have similar characteristics. They don't have similar income. They don't come from the same place. So you cannot use demography alone. It's not going to be sufficient to develop your marketing segmentation strategy. So you need to also consider, for example, the socioeconomic variable. Look at issues around employment, underemployment, unemployment. What level of income? What level of education? Because this also has an impact in terms of the attitudes, the behavior of customers and consumers. And then you can also choose to look at geography as a variable, the location. But again, that is not on its own sufficient because not everybody in Lagos has the same behavior or attitudes. People have different socioeconomic, come from different socioeconomic classes. People come from different ages and ethnic groups in Lagos, different marital status. So you can also then look at behavior. How do they behave relative to that particular category? How do people behave? What attitude do they have concerning, say, cigarettes or alcohol? But again, that should not be enough. There's also their personality, the psychographics, what attitudes they have, their lifestyles and their interests. And then you then have even a more granular variable, the need states, which has to do with people's attitudes and behavior concerning products or services at particular situations. So a need state can be thirst. So I might not be thirsty right now, and therefore I don't need any carbonated soft drink or otherwise. Or perhaps my need state says I'm thirsty, but I also want a bit of a sugar hit. So what I don't want at that time is a bottle of water or any of the branded waters. So need states are variables. So the key message I want to send from this slide is that you can use various variables in the process of market segmentation, but just choosing one on its own cannot be sufficient. You have to look at multiples of variables, not necessarily use all, but multiples of variables that best addresses the customer needs, the wants of the prospects or the current customers that you have. And then once you've looked at the variables you want to use, you begin to segment the market. And so you begin to segment, for example, that a person is male, he's 25 to 30 years old, he's within this socioeconomic class, he lives in Ibadan. He works as an admin officer in a medium, small scale enterprise. He likes sports. And therefore you begin to build elements. If I go back to the previous slide, you begin to utilize some of these variables to segment the market. But you're not yet even narrowing it yet. So what you're doing is you're building different segments. So you also have the female version. So you build different segments from the universe that you are seeking to address, not necessarily the whole of Nigeria, 200 million people. What you're looking at is what is called the addressable market. So maybe you are selling face masks today, right? That's one of the fastest selling products in the world today. So perhaps it's face masks that you're selling. Yes, the universe might be 200 million people in Nigeria, but you may choose to say, I'm seeking to look at those who are in the workplace. So that's perhaps your addressable market you want to address. But even within there, you can then begin to narrow it even sharper to which segments you want to address. So you segment the market. You may have 3 or 4 segments that you think are potentially viable. And you therefore then go to the next step to begin to evaluate the attractiveness of each segment. So you may have about 4 or 5 segments that you think are worth considering. But you then must begin to say, look, which are the top? So part of the process of market segmentation is to follow the Pareto principle, where you look at, is it practicable? Can I actually reach these segments based on my resources or the plans that I have? What's the growth potential of that segment? And what's the profitability of that segment? What's the potential size? What's the growth? What's the purchasing power of that segment? If I am a Rolls-Royce vendor, I need to be asking myself, which segment should I be thinking about? What socioeconomic class? Where are they located? I will be careful about going to try and sell a Rolls-Royce within a university campus, for example. And this is not a shade on campus, but you need to understand your segments so that you can better address them. And then you assess, having assessed the various segments, you then begin to target and select the target market based on a Pareto principle. And as you select the target market, what you then want to do is even go deeper to do profiles of your target market. It's so important to really understand. Remember, we said the process of customer mapping is understanding the target market. So you want to go deeper to even understand them, understand their behavior, understand their psychographics. Because it's when you understand that you'll be able to develop the appropriate product services that will meet those needs and wants. You'll be able to price properly. You'll be able to do the appropriate distribution strategies. Because, for example, if you have a product and your target market is a person or a set of people who tend to want to buy online, then you might be wasting your time selling open markets, especially if your product is a specialized product. So it's important to really understand them. So once you develop the profiles for the chosen segments, you can be primary, the secondary target. You then, so this example is again a primary target arising from this broad segmentation, then narrow it to a target market. Be more specific about what it is. So what you're trying to look at is look at the bullseye. So the bullseye is that consumer that is representative, and the operating word is representative of the target segment that you're selecting, and you drill even further down in trying to understand the target market. Now, so that's a process, but like I always said, you can use single variables, but I advise multiple variables in segmentation. And you can have various degrees where you can have a huge slice of markets, such as FMCGs tend to do. So FMCGs, fast-moving consumer goods, such as Coca-Cola brand. Or you could look at niches that are more focused on smaller segments. Or you can even have customized markets, typically by bespoke industries, such as in fashion industry, even a perfume. You can have a perfume that is fully dedicated to you because the manufacturer fully understands what your needs and wants are. So there are various degrees of segmentation that you can use as you go. So those are some of the steps. And I'll begin to close and take questions or comments with an example I like from Nivea in the UK. Now, when Nivea started, it started really more from a female body cream product. But over time, it began to understand that growth could come from identifying appropriate market segments. But it did this not just from a demographic perspective. So it started to look at how can I address men as well. But it also looked at various need states. In this example, it had to do with Nivea Sun. So it's a product segment category. And because in the UK, they're looking to tan. But they also looked at various, even within various segments, and looking at people who wanted to tan because they wanted to protect themselves when they go out in the sun. There are some that wanted to have a brown skin. So they actually had various segments that they then developed products and services for. I'm currently reading This is Marketing, right, by Seth Godin. And one of the things that he said is, are you going to be creating a key first before understanding the lock? Or would you understand the lock of a door first so that you can then develop the appropriate key for the lock? And I think that's really the big question around market segmentation, that for your marketing plans to be really strong, you need to truly understand those segments that are addressable and that potentially will enable you to make money, regardless of the product or the service that you are thinking about or you currently have. And it doesn't matter if it is business to business or business to consumer. I'll give one more example before I take questions and comments. Is sometime in the 90s, Cadbury Nigeria, where I happened to work for a few years, came up with a fantastic product called Chef Pepper Soup Cubes. And I don't know if anybody ever heard of that. But the whole idea, the whole thinking was that Nigerians loved their pepper soup cubes. Oh, sorry, love pepper soup, taking pepper soup. So the company thought, look, fantastic idea. So let's come up with a pepper soup cube such that it's stock, and therefore you don't have to go through the rigorous process of making pepper soup, but just put the stock cubes, add water, and bang, it gets you your pepper soup straight off. But we struggled in making the brand a success because ultimately we understood that while we're trying to get people, the segments we're trying to address were people who like pepper soup cube, and we were trying to encourage them to take it at home. But the key learning there was actually the segment that pepper soup cube could thrive with was not people at home, because the truth of the matter is people typically don't, and then they didn't, and I don't think they still do, take pepper soup as an ongoing thing at home. They like to take pepper soup when they're sharing, either in bars or they're going to parties, typically. And therefore, the market segment that perhaps the company should have considered then was the market segment of caterers and event planners, such that they are the ones that would use a stock cube in a faster, more convenient, hygienic way to make their pepper soup that they will then serve to users who come to those bars or go to the parties. So you have a situation where that segmentation could have been a business-to-business segmentation, as opposed to what the company thought about as primarily a business-to-consumer segment. So it's so important to have clarity about segmentation, and that then helps you to build in terms of the products and services. So I think that I would stop there just to remind us, to wrap up, that segmentations are the heart of the marketing plan strengthening. It leads you to appropriate target marketing, building your positioning strategy, and then once you've clarified that, you can then develop the appropriate elements of the marketing mix that then guarantees that your marketing plan is strong. And then once you execute well, you can have success in the marketplace. So thank you for your attention. I think I would stop at this moment, and I will take any questions or comments. So thank you again, and thank you, Tope and Dayo.
Wow, yes, sir. Thank you very, very much, sir. That was a really insightful one. Really emphasizing that it's not just even about understanding the consumer, but also breaking it down to the barest minimum and looking at the different factors that you said, from behavior to psychology to demography. Like, you should also consider each of these different aspects when we're looking at when we're trying to create segments for our customers. So we'll be taking questions now and comments. We had some people sending some questions before during the registration process, but we'll take some questions from this session now. So I'll hand it over to my colleague Dayo to answer this session. So you can drop your questions in the comment section.
All right. So if you have questions, you can just drop them in the comment section so that we can answer your questions now. Someone asked if we would get your slides.
What should my answer be, Dayo? so whatever answer Dayo gives will be the answer.
Tope, what's the decision?
So we appeal to please get your slides.
Okay, so yes, I'll share the slides.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, so there's a question here. Okay, so the questions are coming in now. Okay, so someone asked, I can't get the name, says, apart from demography, socioeconomic variables, geography, also, he said, what other factors can we consider for market segmentation strategy? That apart from demography, socioeconomic variables, and geography, he said, what other factors can we consider for market segmentation strategy?
So I mentioned 2. So you actually mentioned 6, and you've called out 4 out of the 6. So the other 2, and which I actually tend to have a bias for, right, is the psychographics and the need states. Now, the other 4 are important, and you must always come to play. But ultimately, it's about the lifestyle, the attitudes, the habits, and then the need states of the customer that really determine the segmentation. Because the fact that I live in Lagos doesn't mean that I have the same lifestyle or need states as a person who lives next door to me. So all those other variables are important, but the other 2 that are critical, which must always come to play, is psychographics and the need states.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. The second question is from Oluwaseun Emmanuel. The person says, when creating a marketing plan, what drives it? Is it satisfying a service or need or driving profitability? Said, what drives a marketing plan? Is it satisfying a service or need or profitability?
It is both. So there are various definitions of what marketing is. So a definition of marketing is, and I'm going to answer a question, but just please follow through, is that marketing is a process of understanding, of identifying, anticipating customer needs and wants, and delivering those wants and needs at a profit, right? So in there is satisfying customer needs and wants at a profit. So the marketing, the 2 are important. One of my most simplistic definitions of marketing is that you're giving value and you're getting value in return. Where you as a marketer, the value you're giving is you're satisfying the customer needs and wants. And the value you're getting in return is the money that they give you. So both in marketing are important. You cannot do one without the other. You must satisfy needs and wants. If you don't satisfy needs and wants, you will not make profit, right? If you're satisfying needs and wants and you're not making money, a time will come when you can no longer satisfy those needs and wants. So the 2 go together. They are not mutually exclusive.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. And there's another question here from Sharon. It says that in your experience, sir, have you known segments to evolve through a product or service life cycle?
Yes. And my typical example, because I lived through it, was managing the Bombita brand. So the Bombita brand in the first perhaps 30, 40 years of its existence in Nigeria was focused on the family. And the family, yes, included children, but a lot of what Bombita was doing in the 70s, 80s, and 90s was focused on the family as a whole and also on sports and energy. But from about late 90s and particularly in 2000s, the brand, as part of having to reinvent itself and be able to grow because it was get to a point of maturity and at risk of declining, then understood that the core consumer of the brand was actually children between the ages of, say, 6 and 12, while the core shopper was the mother. So the brand redefined its targets, markets, and segmentation from just being family in a not broad sense, on the assumption that everybody in the family takes beverages like Bonvita, and they selected the real target focus of children from about age 6 to 12. And once it had clarity about that, also recognizing that the mother as the second target and a critical person in terms of the shopper, remember what I said about the user and the shopper was also important, and therefore deployed its marketing mix elements to begin to focus on children, but also speaking to mothers through the eye of the children. So yes, you can have a situation where the segment evolves along the life cycle of the brand, but ultimately it's dependent on the managers of the brand to see where you're going to drive growth from. And Bombita had identified clearly that its growth was going to come by a redefinition of its target market segmentation.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we have more questions, and we might not be able to take all of the questions. I have some sent to me privately as well. So I'm just going to choose a couple of them so we can wrap up. So additionally, please drop your emails in the chat section so that we can send you the link to the recording of this session as well, and we can send you the slides. All right, sir. There's another question here from Lillian. It says, given the high internet penetration in Nigeria, you find that you still have people who are traditionalists and who are the bulk of your market. However, you also identify a growing market among digital stars, the youth. How do you address the dilemma of reaching your consumers only through the digital platform?
So I keep on saying that it's important not to put the cart before the horse. Once you clarify who your target market is, and if you and why it's important to clarify is that you then begin to understand how you deploy your marketing mix elements, including your media strategy. So if your target market you've identified is the digital natives, the Gen Z and younger millennials, for example, and if their primary media of consumption is the digital space, then it means that all your communication and your strategy, your Pareto principle being followed, must address them. But it's not just enough as well to understand that, yes, they're in digital space. There's so many platforms in digital space. You need to also understand that in the plethora of options in the marketing space, on the digital space, which of those platforms would best address your target market? If your target market, for example, has to be to people who are aged 20 to say 28 or 29, and they're female, it's unlikely that you should spend too much money on Facebook. It's more likely you should spend more money on, say, Instagram, for example. So those are the reasons why you need to understand the market segment, understand their behavior, their attitudes, understand their media consumption habits, their lifestyle, their need states, and all those other things that we've talked about. And once you understand that, you'll then be able to deploy appropriately.
Okay. All right, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Now we'll move to some of the questions. We'll take just two questions that were sent in the form earlier. Okay, so this is from Jide, Jide from the Omoyele agency. He said, considering the effect of the pandemic, what strategic advice would you give a new agency for their business development direction?
So I'm assuming agency you're talking about here is an ad or a Marcoms agency?
It's a PR agency.
Okay, so a PR agency. Now, so clearly, since a PR agency and therefore you're going to be representing organizations there, I think one of the key things, and I've said this in a lot of calls I've had in the past month and this season, is how can you get the understand what's going on in the market space. So first of all, you must understand who are your potential publics. Which kind of organizations do you want to do business with? So the first point is you're an agency and therefore you're first of all a business to business proposition, even though ultimately you're going to be addressing publics. So which industries do you want to be an expert for, a consultant for? So understand that. If you happen to want to play in FMCG, then you must clearly understand what are the consumer concerns at this point in time. And in the process of developing your business model, therefore, how are you going to begin to influence those various stakeholders? Clearly, any agency coming to play today, anyone involved in the Marcoms industry right now, whether it's PR, whether it's advertising, you're going to have to invest in technology and play a lot more in digital space, because people are going to be spend a lot more time on digital. But ultimately, a lot of it is going to be who are the stakeholders you want to be addressing. But you must be investing, for any new agency right now, you must be investing in technology. And how can you ensure that you can reach the various stakeholders in the digital space and not losing sight of television as well as you go in. But I'll say in terms of business model, critical thing about technology and also understand the various stakeholders that you're going to play with. I hope that helps.
Thank you very much, sir. Another question. Okay, so someone asked that you mentioned you're reading a book currently. That's
Yes.
what's the name of the author, and also if you can state your 3 favorite marketing books so that people can basically.
Okay, I don't know if you can see this. So this is what I'm currently reading. Okay,
Yeah.
this is Marketing by Seth Godin. Okay, all right. So the 3 is tough, but I tend to make reference to. I mean, there are 2 classics, so they're not necessarily current. So Seth Godin, this is current. I recommend you try and look at that. There are 2 classics I tend to speak about because they kind of help me, especially when I have some thoughts. So the classics, some of the examples may be dated, but I think they just trigger great thoughts. There's the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing by Al Ries and Jack Trout. And there's also Positioning by Al Ries and also Jack Trout. So they are classics, but I think they trigger useful thoughts. I think there are varied other books you can read. There's a whole textbook if you are really interested in a textbook by Kotler. Okay, well that's a real textbook. I think also there are books on brands by Al Ries. He also has books on brands and brand building by Al Ries. So I think books by Al Ries, Kotler, I think that they're useful. I think also Seth Godin's a useful book. I think it also helps to read books that have to do with case studies or brands that have done well. So for example, if you read some of Richard Branson's books or some of Nike founder books, I think those are some of the things that just can challenge the marketing paradigm.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. Another question for I believe this is from a makeup artist. So you said, going to your message about the makeup artist, how can they carry on their business due to social distancing? What should they be looking at during this season? And what's the advice you can give to them?
You know, I saw a meme yesterday that called for makeup, they call it mask camera, something like that, because everybody's going to be wearing masks, and it's only the eyes that are going to be showing right now. Okay, so makeup artists, I think one of the key things is people are going to be covering up a bit here. So what can you do innovatively around the eyes, such that our eyes can, well, you know, the eyes of those who use makeup can be brighter. That's one. I think we're also in the realm of virtual reality and augmented reality. So how can you come up with a product, for example, that can enable people do makeup for themselves in a more professional manner, but you've provided the technology from a virtual reality or an augmented reality perspective, so that they can actually buy from you that technology, and they can play around with that technology to do makeup themselves. Because look, if you cannot go physically to them, how can you get yourself to them in a certain way? So I think you need to look at technology and look for creative ways in which you can begin to make some money utilizing technology through either virtual reality or augmented reality.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. There's another question from Promise Osigwe. It says, is it possible to have multiple bullseye for a product that seeks to satisfy the needs of multiple target groups?
I wouldn't call it multiple bullseye. I'll call it primary and secondary targets, or tertiary. I think it's always important to have a primary target, and you build a bullseye, if you will, for your primary target. But you can also have a secondary target, all right, and address your secondary targets. So you can describe, right? Semantic-wise, I will not call it a bullseye, but I'll call it a secondary target. The bullseye is typically used to reference the primary target. But you can have the secondary target, and you can have the same description in detail of profiling the secondary targets, right? So you might argue that in that a bullseye, no, typically bullseye is primary target, but you can also describe your secondary target and still address the secondary target. The example I gave you of Bonvita, the primary target was the children. Well, the secondary target, because they were critical, being the shopper, were the mothers. So we had to understand the mothers and still found ways to communicate with the mothers. So a straight answer is yes, you can have more than one primary target, except that semantic-wise, I would not call it the bullseye, but I can have a secondary target that I also address.
Thank you, sir. There's also another question. Someone said from Oluwaseun Emmanuel, says marketing plan for an NGO organization. Will profitability of meeting needs come into that mix?
So profit is not necessarily monetary. Profit is if you've achieved the goals and objective that you've set to achieve. So for an NGO, if your goals and objective is you want to reduce the incidence of HIV or malaria in Nigeria, and that's your goal, and you've set a percentage, you want to reduce the incidence by say 50% in 1 year, profit to you becomes the achievement of those goals and objectives. But of course, you know you need some money to be able to sustain and run yourself. So typically you're not seeking to make money, you're not for profit, but you at least you need sufficient money from donors, supporters to keep your NGO running. If you are not, over a period of time, because obviously before people donate to you, they want to be sure that you're going to achieve those goals and objectives. If over a period of time, you're not achieving those goals and objectives, there's the risk of those supporters withdrawing their support. And therefore, so to speak, you're not profitable to them, not necessarily in monetary terms, but in terms of delivering the goals and objectives. So for non-for-profits, for NGOs, your profit is not necessarily monetary. It is in terms of the achievement of the goals and objectives that for which you are set out.
All right, sir. Thank you very much, sir. One other question from Dayo says, as a financial marketing manager covering a region dominated by informal sectors and traders that depend on daily sales, what will you advise in this COVID-19 new normal?
Okay, so we are locked down for now, right? It's been opened up a bit from next week, but caution everyone, be careful if you do go out. That's by the way. But we must accept that businesses are taking a hit today. So the question is, when things become much more open, the issue is going to be around health and safety and hygienic practices. So how, as you as an organization, going to find ways in which you support those people who make their income on a daily basis? If, for example, and I was speaking just yesterday to someone who runs a business that thrives on the hawkers channel, the informal channel. So one of the things that you can do is consider how do you invest in the lives of those people, so that when the economy begins to open up, you're concerned about their health and safety. So how can you, for example, provide face masks that are branded in the name of your organization or the brands, such that if I'm a sausage roll seller and I have a face mask and it's branded with the organization or the brand's name, it even becomes a form of visibility for the brand. And you're also showing that you care for those people playing in the formal sector. How perhaps are you going to be looking at taking a hit? I must accept that in this season, businesses are taking a hit on their profitability. But this is the time that calls for additional empathy. So even if you're going to take a hit in terms of value chain, you may say to that hawker or that informal person, the retailer, that you're going to look at maybe extending better credit facilities, so long you're sure your risk capability ensures that you don't lose money, or in trying to increase their profitability levels, because what you want to do is ensure that you retain them over this period of time. I think organizations that are going to succeed in this era are those who show empathy for everybody who is going through tough times, whether in their value chain, whether it be retailers or distributors or the consumer. Because by God's grace, we will go through this season. And people, consumers, are going to remember those who supported them through this season.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. Other questions from the group? So this question is from Thomas from Crown Flower Mills. He says, what are the core strengths of marketing? How can you convince a consumer to get a Plan B product?
Okay, I'm trying to understand the question. So if essentially you're saying, if a consumer already uses another product and you're trying to get the person to maybe switch to another product, if that's the question, I'll answer it from that understanding. Okay. So first of all, the first part of your question talks about cost strengths of marketing. I think a cost strength of a marketing person or a brand manager or a marketing is truly understanding the consumer, truly understanding what the customer does and why does the customer do that. So when you get insights, so you need to be insightful, really insightful as a customer, really insightful as a customer. As a marketer, really insightful. Understand the what and the why. It's not enough to understand the what, understand the why. Once you understand the why, you then be able to help the customer or the consumer in terms of other products or the communication that you put in place. So a marketing person must be insightful, strategic, understanding the customer, really, and have a strong sense of intuition. Now, how do you switch a person that is using one brand to switch to another? Is when you understand that customer, you know what his motivations or her motivations are. Once you understand that, you then be able to develop perhaps a superior product. So differentiation is key in marketing. So you develop a differentiated product that meets a need or a want that maybe other products, Plan A brand doesn't offer. Or it might be the kind of communication that you offer that can make them switch. Again, from one of my previous experiences, using Bonvita as an example again, is one of the areas they tried to differentiate back in the day was the quantity and quality of vitamins and minerals that it had inside. So you can look at differentiation from a product or a service perspective and how you communicate to customers. What are extra value that you offer? Some of the extra value could be convenience and the after sales service that you offer. So ultimately you're trying to look for differentiation, competitive advantage, offer things that others don't offer. That's how you get people to switch to your brand.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. We won't be able to take all the questions. There are so many questions. So I will hand over to Tope so that we can basically round up. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much to everyone that asked questions. Thank you very much, Toby. And sir, thank you very, very much for giving us some minutes out of your very precious time. I know they are very busy, but we really appreciate this, sir. And on behalf of myself and Dayo, I'd like to appreciate everyone that has also joined in, and we would like to call it a day here now. But before we do, we'd also like to reemphasize that we need to stay safe at this period. Even though the lockdown has been eased a bit, we need to still adhere to the instructions that have been provided by the appropriate bodies. And one other thing that we need to also do is let's not be carriers of fake news. Let's try to verify every information before we share it so that we don't cause panic in a pandemic. Let's always look at the bright side to everything. And I believe that we would all come out of this alive. So thank you very much for everybody. So I think we can call it a day now.
Okay, if I may just say, I can offer, I can see all the questions, but I can see a lot of questions or comments. So okay. If there are any questions or comments that have not been answered, if you want to do an email, okay. And if you have an email list of participants, yeah. I will try and answer in short bullet points some of the answers that may not have been answered on the call.
Oh, okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir. So I think we'll do that, Dayo. We have a list, so we'll just compile. If you still have some questions, you can still drop them here. So we'll compile the questions and we'll send them to Mr. Lampe. Then when he responds, we'll send them back to you, everyone. So thank you very much for joining in. We hope to see you whenever we have another series like this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, please, you can drop your emails in the comments section with your question so that we can send you the response directly to your mail. Also, this session is live on Facebook, so you can still watch. Within the next 24 hours using this link. All right, so I just posted a link so you can watch it right there. So drop your comments and question with your email so we can respond to you after the session. Thank you, everyone. Oh, God.
Goodbye.